That's right. Tonight's the night. You will be hearing that theme song in living color, live, in person, ready to go, week 1. It's Cowboys versus Buccaneers. It's kickoff time. It's time to get this damn money. Let's go. I'm so hyped up for this. Let's get into it. Guys, I'm going to bring you the video today. It's not going to touch on tonight's game. I've already gone over that. I've already given a pick for that. It was actually a teaser. If you're still curious, the teaser was a 6-point teaser, obviously, to bring the Bucs. At that time, it was down to 0.5 as a favorite, obviously, and then combining that with the Rams, and also at that time, it was bringing the Rams down to 0.5. So the tease was Buccaneers minus 0.5 versus Cowboys, and then Rams minus 0.5 versus the Bears. Those lines are no longer available. The tease is still valuable because the tease will get you down to, I believe, 2 right now with the Buccaneers and like 1.5 with the Rams, which means that you're still going to end up below 7, 6, and 3. So you get all those key numbers. So the tease is still very valuable if you want to tease those 2 games, but that's up to you because the line has moved. Aside from that, though, what I really want to talk to you about today, I have like 4 different topics, really. One of them does involve the Buccaneers, so let's start there. So the Buccaneers, if you've been watching like NFL Network or just listening to different podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, and people are talking about their expectations for this year, for the Super Bowl, and whatever else, right? I've got to say, one thing that really just irritates the hell out of me is that there have been so many people, especially like professional NFL players, analysts, and things like that, that will just blindly take the Buccaneers to make it back to the Super Bowl. And I get that there's Tom Brady on that team and it's hard to bet against Brady. I totally understand that. But for the most part, they don't even really highlight Brady, and that's not the reason that they're taking the Buccaneers. They're calling the Buccaneers the best team in the NFC, and it's, like it's not even a question. The Buccaneers are, have the most talent, the best coach, and all sort of stuff. First of all, you didn't say that last year before Brady got there. But secondly, Brady and that whole team really lucked out last year in the playoffs. I don't know if you remember the regular season, they didn't start off hot. They did get hot towards the end of the year, and that was to be expected with new new quarterback with Brady, and just kind of getting accustomed to everything. So that made sense. But in the playoffs, if you take a look at who they played, you'll see one pretty big trend. And you know what? I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you who they played here. So they played Washington, then the Saints, then the Packers, and then the Super Bowl, of course, against the Chiefs. Now, what do we notice about these teams? Well, the first 2 teams they beat basically had, let's just take it one at a time. So Washington played Tyler Heinicke as their starter, and he played the entire game, or most of it. He did have an injury. He went out for a few plays, but he did come back. So really what's important about that is Tyler Heinicke, it's not like he was the backup and he got put in because Alex Smith was injured. In a sense, that's true, but in an even realer sense, he was more like your 3rd or 4th string guy. So you have to remember, Alex Smith was not the starter at the beginning of the season. It was Dwayne Haskins, and he got benched. Then I believe it was Kyle Allen. I have to look it up, but there was another quarterback that came in after Haskins was terrible, and then he got hurt, and then they had to put in Alex Smith, and then he got hurt, and then they had to put in Tyler Heinicke, and Tyler Heinicke kept that team alive against the Buccaneers. Week 1 in the playoffs, the wild card weekend, and really he lost by a touchdown. But had he, 1, not taken a kind of a bad shoulder shot, and 2, had Washington maybe had a better quarterback back there, somebody who was a little bit more seasoned, that could have totally ruined the Buccaneers' chances right then and there. And that, to me, was really the best chance to beat the Buccaneers for the postseason. But they won. They got out of there. They escaped. So then they go play the Saints second week of the playoffs of the divisional round. And what do we remember about Drew Brees? Well, 1, he was injured. He was injured most of the season. But secondly, in this game, they actually had to bring in Jameis Winston for one pass and it was a pass that they wanted to go downfield with. And they did that because Drew Brees admittedly could not pass deep. He was having a lot of trouble getting the ball more than like 10 yards down the field. Aside from that, we now know that Michael Thomas was also playing on a banged up ankle that he had to get surgery for. Speaking of which, I didn't even mention that about the Washington team. Terry McLaurin was playing on 2 busted ankles. So even though Drew Brees was in the game, it was not the Drew Brees we know and love and the one that we have become accustomed to. Even in his older age, in his tenure with the NFL, he was still an amazing quarterback. After the season was over, it came out that he was playing through still essentially fractured ribs, still hurt thumb, and other like nicks, cuts, and bruises all over the place. On top of that, he had, I believe it was a rotator cuff tear that he was playing through, and that's why he couldn't throw the ball deep. And they had to bring in Jameis Winston for a play just so they could throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. And again, we're partnering all that up with Michael Thomas also not being really 100% and not even being really close to it at that point. And then Michael Thomas came out and said he only played in that game because he knew it was going to be Drew Brees' last game and he didn't want to miss it. So that's 2 in a row. Now they play the Packers, and I can't really take too much away from the Packers or from the Buccaneers beating the Packers. They just did it. It was a close game, but what I will say, and this is not the personnel, I think as far as I can remember and as far as everything that I've looked up, they were healthy at that time, or Aaron Rodgers was healthy. But what was important in that game, if you remember, the Packers were driving down the field and they were down 8. They take 3 shots at the end zone. Aaron Rodgers just cannot connect on all 3 of those. It's 4th down. And Aaron Rodgers, after the game, says, I thought we were going for it on 4th. I thought we were going to get another shot. That's why I did what I did on 3rd down. They didn't do that. Instead, LaFleur decides to kick the field goal, essentially turning a 1-possession game into a 1-possession game. And now they're down 5, and they give the ball back to Brady. And essentially at that point, he just runs out the clock and they win. So while the personnel was there, and that's, again, can't do anything about that, the coaching just, it made a bonehead decision at the absolute wrong time. And while the Buccaneers are going to take it, and I'm not going to take anything away from them, at the end of the day, they won that game. That was also a stroke of luck in their favor to have a coach go for a field goal when down 8 at the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. And then lastly, they play the Chiefs. And you already know, because this is the one that's been harped on all offseason. The Chiefs had to beat up offensive line. Patrick Mahomes had a toe injury. They really couldn't move the ball. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was having some issues. So that one's been discussed enough. So we all know about those injuries and those setbacks. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because, yes, every Super Bowl winning team has luck going in their direction. They have something that worked for them. But in this particular case, it was literally every step of the way the Buccaneers had something break their direction to get the win. And in the first case of the first week, it was literally the fact that they were playing what should have been like a 3rd or 4th string quarterback, and they could barely squeak out the win. So if you're looking at futures and Super Bowl odds and winning the NFC and stuff like that, don't be so quick to lay your money on the Buccaneers. Look back at these games and ask yourself if you really think they're going to be able to do this again. Yes, Tom Brady is probably more familiar with the offense at this point. At the same time, those players that you think are amazing and great, don't get me wrong, Mike Evans is still there. He's still amazing. The defense is still going to be great. But the other guys, they're all a year older. Antonio Brown especially. Tom Brady especially. They're great players, but I am not going to sit here and tell you that Tom Brady at 44 is the same Tom Brady that we saw, in his late 20s. And so even Gronk is going to have another year under his belt, and we saw what happened when he was getting too much playing time when he was back with the Patriots. I don't have any faith that the Buccaneers will make the Super Bowl again. I do think that they'll probably make the playoffs, and I think that they should win their division. But that is a long cry away from making the Super Bowl. I really do think that they're going to run into some more competent, uninjured teams in the postseason. and that's what's going to end up knocking them out. And that's just how it goes. So again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Buccaneers. They won. They get the trophy. They have their championship last year. I'm just telling you, for betting purposes, don't listen to all the talking heads, and don't just automatically take the Buccaneers or think that they're a shoe-in to get back to the Super Bowl. So that's been touched on. Next thing I wanted to go over here today was really jumping on some teams. And kind of when to do it and where and how, what exactly am I, what am I talking about? But when I say jump on teams. So if we look at this is your strength of schedule. This is based on win totals. So, and this is off of Warren Sharp's website, so I'm not taking credit for this. This is all credit to him. It's sharpfootballstats.com. You can go pull it up yourself. And I really recommend taking a look at the site because there's lots and lots of great information on here. Lots of amazing tools. And it is absolutely free. So he does have websites that he will charge you for, just like all touts do. And that's fine. If you want to pay for it and just be done with it, that's fine. But this website is free, and he's basically giving you the tools to say, look, this is what I use to make my picks. So if you want to take the time, the effort, and learn how to use these things and then how to implement them, you can do it yourself for free. But that's another topic. So for right now, I just want to look at the strength of schedule. So this is the full year strength of schedule. And a couple of things that I notice here, well, most importantly, we have the Colts here at 12. Meaning they have the 12th toughest schedule, which is not really that difficult. It's around average. This line right here in the middle is an average difficulty. Down here is going to be your teams that have a harder pathway. And then up here we have the teams with the easiest strength of schedule, the 49ers and the Browns, which is why I really like these two teams this year. And I'm really heavily invested in them everywhere, from fantasy to props to futures to everything. These two teams have really come into play. But the Colts, to me, are very important. And the reason that is because I want to take a look at a certain set of weeks. And up here, you can adjust how many weeks we're looking at. So if we look at just the first 4 weeks, let's take a look at who has the toughest schedule. So immediately, the Browns and the 49ers are not at the top here. They don't have the easiest schedule the first 4 weeks. They're down here at 10 and 11. So still not difficult, but it's not the easiest schedule either. The Colts, though, have gone from 12 all the way down to 31. So they have the second hardest schedule to open the season. The Saints are at 19, and that's important, too, because in the first, I don't know if you saw the first one for the season long, they were down at like 28 or 27, somewhere down here. They have a pretty difficult schedule the entire season. So let's just keep an eye on these two. So we have the Saints at 19 and the Colts at 31. So really don't want to be too invested with either of those teams that early in the season because of the difficult schedule. Come week 6, the Saints are still at 18, so that's maybe a little bit of a softer spot in their schedule. Still relatively the same, though. The Colts are at 26, so they're kind of working their way up the ladder here. Maybe the harder part of their season is done with at this point. And so they've gone from 31 to 26. Now let's go into week 7. Still kind of the same. The Saints get a little bit harder. Colts just a little bit better. And it is really not until, I believe, week 10 or so. Let's take a look. There we go. Yeah, week 10. So at week 10, we see that the Colts are here at 17. So they've moved from 31 to 17. So week 10, the Colts have basically put the difficult part of their schedule behind them. And really, what this means to us as far as betting on the Colts is this is when you want to start looking to ride the Colts. Those first 4 weeks especially, you want to be fading the shit out of the Colts. A lot of touts that I've heard, surprisingly enough, and even, like people on TV and ESPN and things like that are still really in love with the Colts, and they think that Carson Wentz is amazing and he's going to do a great job with this new team, and he's back with Frank Reich, and they think that Michael Pittman is going to take a step forward, and all this great stuff, all these high expectations, which is fine. But really what you want to do is we're trying to play the marketplace. We're trying to play those emotions, just like a stock market. When everybody is on something and they're saying this is going to be really good, this is really good, this is going to show up, they're going to have a great season, and we as bettors are maybe a little more skeptical, and we see that they're missing a lot of their key players. Their brand new quarterback has really not taken a lot of snaps. He didn't get a whole preseason. He got all of like a week in the training camp. So there's a lot of questions there. And they have a tough beginning to the schedule. But the media is still in love with them, and people that are just kind of like passing fans, and maybe people who are just in Vegas, or they're just, hey, I just want some action, I'm going to put $20 on them. Those people are out there helping kind of stabilize that market. That's when we want to jump and kind of fade the Colts. So we're going to take all the other teams. By week 6, though, when the Colts have kind of gotten the hard part of their season, or some of it, out of the way, we can see more or less what the team is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and more importantly, Frank Reich has had a chance to adjust his team. We will start looking and evaluating them on a week-by-week basis. And Frank Reich, if you didn't already know this, he, just like Sean Payton, is a slow starter. For whatever reason, these guys start slow to the season. They usually lose either their first game or their second game, or both. And perfect evidence of this is if you go back to last year, the Colts lost week 1 against the Jaguars, giving the Jaguars literally their only win of the season. So my personal belief, and I apologize if you've heard my videos before, you've heard me say this, but I really do think that those coaches take a lot of analytics into account, which is great, except there's no stats to go off of week 1, so your team will get better as you have more and more data about your opponents. So you start off slow and you get better towards the end of the year. But in this case, it doesn't really matter why they're getting better, but it does matter that we believe that their team is going to get better, that the coaching will get better, their schemes will get better, and their difficulty of schedule will be easier. So around week 6 is when we'll start looking at them. By the time it gets to week 10, we really want to be finding our spots as far as when we want to jump on the Colts, because what's going to happen is that media that is in love with the Colts right now, or that is saying that they're going to be better than expected, is going to turn on them. Probably after week 4, 5, or 6, when the Colts are sitting at like 1-5 or 2-4 or 0-6, the media is going to do nothing but talk about how terrible they are and how bad Carson Wentz is and how bad this team is gelling and why they aren't winning and all this other stuff. So when everybody's doing that, the numbers in the books are going to adjust, because you're going to have people betting the other side. Now everybody's going to bet against them, which is going to open up value on the Colts, which is when we will bet the Colts. So like I said, and this isn't like every week after that you're going to blindly bet the Colts, but you're going to take your shots. You're going to say, okay, I think this is a team that they can beat. And this is when the media is really going against them and everybody's betting against them. Let me jump on that other side while there's value there. So same thing with the Saints. And the Saints are a little bit different, because if you've noticed, this entire time, weeks 1 through 10, they've been in this like bottom half here where it's a difficult schedule. And really, if you look at their schedule and just their division, they have some tough opponents. Obviously, the Buccaneers are in their division, and so they're going to play 2 tough games there. They do have a lot of issues going on as far as Michael Thomas being injured, no more Drew Brees. They are losing some defensive linemen due to injury. They have all sorts of things going on. So while a lot of people, same thing as the Colts, a lot of people still see the Saints and they see them as a brand name and they know Sean Payton's still there, they're going to still think they're okay to start the season, which is why it's a good time to fade them, like I'm doing this week with the Packers. But as they get further into the season, what's going to happen? Well, Jameis Winston is going to be more comfortable running the offense. Sean Payton is going to be, get better, just like Frank Reich. Like I said, he's also a slow starter, so he'll get his analytics, he'll get his data, he'll get better schemes. The receivers will maybe get better as far as the ones who are currently in the room, but hopefully at some point we have Michael Thomas come back. And what will happen there is Michael Thomas, I fully expect him to come back like right after their bye week, which I think is week 6. So week 7 or 8 is probably when I think he's going to come into the back into the room, assuming he still wants to play. And when he gets there, it's still going to probably take him 1, possibly 2 weeks to really get his legs under him and get back into like game shape and stamina and all that kind of stuff. I think health-wise, all the doctors I've heard and listened to say that he'll be ready to go. He'll be 100%. At that point, it's just a matter of kind of conditioning and getting back into mid-season form. So let's say he comes back week 8. Around week 10 or so is when we can fully expect Jameis Winston to have a true number 1 receiver again. And by that point, if Traquan Smith and Callaway have kind of made a name for themselves, or they've been showing up in spots, they will look even better when they're going up against the second and third corners instead of the first and second corners. So at some point, like I said, we'll want to start kind of jumping on the Saints here, but this one is going to be a little bit more tricky because there's not a particular spot in the season where the Saints can say, okay, now our difficult part is over. Pretty much their entire season is going to be spent on this second half. So what it will really come down to is going to be picking like 1 week at a time, and I mean that literally one game, as in, okay, let's say the Saints are, obviously they have Kamara, let's say they're really, really good at swinging the ball outside and using like some sweeps and things like that. If we know that they're playing the Falcons and the Falcons are struggling against that particular play type, then we can maybe say, yeah, let's take the Saints in this one spot, especially if the Falcons are having a better year than expected and the Saints are having this bad schedule and maybe a bad season at that point. Well, again, they'll open up value on the other side, at which point we would be taking that other team. So, not saying that I'm going to be taking the Falcons when they show up. I'm just saying that is a spot to look for and kind of look for the strengths of the Saints and look at the weaknesses of the other teams and find out where you can play those advantages. So, those are the two teams that I wanted to go over. And more importantly, just kind of show you what to look for as far as when to jump on certain teams and when they can be more advantageous to you. One note on this, and this isn't really on the strength of schedule, this is just in general when it comes to betting. You don't want to bet teams that are okay or that are just kind of good, or maybe they're like playoff contenders, but we don't really know too much about them. When it comes to betting, you really want an A or an F. I don't want no C's, I don't want B's, I want an A or an F. That's it. What's going to happen is teams that are in the middle are going to consistently be in these coin flip games where you might have an edge, but if the quarterback isn't great, if the coach isn't great, if they don't have a lot of great receiving weapons, they're going to make mistakes and it's going to cost you. And while any team, any player can make you a mistake and cost you, these teams that are just kind of in the middle are going to essentially make it much worse because they don't have the tools that they need to get out of that hole. If you take a team that's really, really good, teams like, the Chiefs, well, I think the Browns will be really good, the Patriots, these teams that we would have ranked in like a top 10, the 49ers I think are going to be really good this year. They have the weapons, the coach, the schemes to get out of this. They can throw a pick, they can get a fumble, they can do lots of things to kind of put themselves maybe in a little bit of a hole, but then dig themselves back out of it. And to me, that's really important. You want these teams that we expect to be very, very good, or the teams that we expect to be very, very bad. The teams that are very bad, obviously we can fade them in certain spots, but really what will happen is kind of like what I was talking about earlier. When a team is, let's say, 2-7, the media and everybody that is just kind of a general fan is going to just fade the hell out of that team, and that will always open up value on the other side. Teams like the Jaguars, who went 1-15 last year, I believe were like 9-7 against the spread last year, maybe even better than that. So because those lines are so inflated, everybody just sees Jaguars as a bad team, and everybody on the TV or podcast or whatever talks about them being a bad team. All the money comes in on the other side. It inflates the line. It creates value for us. So don't be scared to take the value. Like I said, you really want the A or the F. Don't try to follow these teams that are like C's. Unless you really, really have a great understanding of their schematics and of their opponent's schematics, it's going to be a very tough going for you. So keep that in mind, especially, like I can tell you myself, I pick usually like 4 to 6 teams every year at the beginning of the year that I really want to follow along with and not just get to know their team, but get to know everything about like the depth of that team, the scheme of that team, their division, their opponents, stuff like that. And so like for me this year, it's going to be the Browns, 49ers, the Cowboys, Patriots, the Ravens, and the Rams. And like I said, those are the teams I expect to be pretty good. Not to say that there won't be others, but that's just who I have set out for myself at the beginning of the year. Once I have a firm grasp on those teams, then I'll start looking at the teams that they are playing against, and you can kind of branch out from there and start building your repertoire for the entire NFL. But if it's just one person, you don't have a team, you're not paying people to help you, I will tell you it's very, very hard to manage 32 teams and every little aspect of that team. So you want to drill that down to like 4 or 6 that's more manageable, and then you can really take advantage of those individual spots. Lastly, guys, and this is just, I guess, some depth chart talk here, and this is for props as well as fantasy and really just NFL in general. So Gus Edwards, I'm sure you've heard a lot about him, a lot about the Ravens lately. They signed Le'Veon Bell, and they signed another running back. I can't even remember his name right now. They have Tyson Williams. Weird apostrophe on that name. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing this up is in my personal home fantasy league, we had somebody take Gus Williams in, I believe, like the 4th round, which that's fine. It's not terrible. But I've heard a lot of people picking him very high in fantasy, which leads me to believe that when it comes to props and just the belief of what's going to happen for Gus Edwards this year, is that it's pretty high. And the Buccaneers are going to use him as like their true workhorse running back. And I got to tell you, I just don't see that happening. Gus Williams, I'm sure you've also heard this, he's not really involved in the passing game, which isn't terrible. He could still get a lot of work on the ground, but I don't think they're bringing in this amount of players just to get depth. You know, if you just needed a depth piece, you would have brought in Le'Veon Bell, put him on the practice team, and that would have been it. But they brought him in, they brought another running back in, they were still looking at other running backs, evaluating other running backs, and to me that's a bad sign, because it means that there's something there that they want to take advantage of that maybe Gus Williams does not give them. Something that J.K. Dobbins was able to do that Gus Edwards isn't, whether that's, like speedy, outside running or jukes or whatever. Maybe it is a goal line presence, because I know J.K. Dobbins was, it seemed like Gus Edwards should have been the goal line guy because he's just a bigger dude, but J.K. Dobbins was actually their goal line back, and he was more efficient on the goal line. So maybe that's something else they're thinking of. And I would be very hesitant to lay anything with Gus Edwards this year or really rely on him too much, aside from the fact that there's like 4 people now in the running back room again. You also have Lamar Jackson, obviously. So just kind of temper expectations with Gus Edwards. Don't roll into any game thinking he's like your number 1 running back. Don't be laying a bunch of money on him on the touchdown props or whatever. I'm very hesitant right now. Maybe as the season goes along, we'll see more out of him and how they're going to use him, and that'll change. But for right now, I would just really temper expectations. Lastly, guys, 2 last things. So one, the strength of schedule here, I am going to update this and put this attached to my unit rankings. So in previous videos, I had unit rankings for every team. So the quarterback was ranked 1 through 32, the coach was ranked 1 through 32, secondary, running backs, all that kind of stuff. So what I didn't have on there was strength of schedule, and so I used that particular chart to make like my power rankings, and then that's how I pick the teams that I want to follow. I'm going to add the strength of schedule on there, and then I'll be putting that picture as far as the chart and where everybody gets laid out as far as like power rankings are concerned on my Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, I just go give me a follow. It's at AG_sports21. Just find me on there, follow it. Like I said, I want to put that picture on there. Even if you're not actively betting this week, or you're not looking to get too involved this week, it is something that I think is good knowledge, and something that is going to remain consistent throughout the year. The only thing that's really going to change it is injuries, but even at that, I'm not critiquing one individual player. We're going to critique like the running back room, the receiving core. It's not just one player that we're looking at. So good information there. And then now, absolutely lastly, I did just want to say, guys, if you have not already checked out OddsJam, please do. Now that we're in the actual regular season, the first game is tonight, OddsJam is going to be invaluable for you. OddsJam, if you are not familiar with this and you haven't seen it in the other videos, it is a website that shows you spreads for every game in the NFL, and it really shows spreads for whatever sport you want, but for us it's going to specifically be the NFL. You know what, let me just show you this. And I know the video's already going long, guys, I apologize, but this, again, if you are serious about betting and you really want to make some money at this, even if it's just your little side hustles, something for fun, you should use all of these tools. They will make you money, or they will at least help you lose less money. So with OddsJam, and I apologize because the screen I have set up right now is not able to show you the full screen here, but this is enough to really see at least the gist of what I'm looking at here. So I have the Buccaneers versus Tampa Bay, or I'm sorry, versus the Cowboys. Right now it's just on the money line, right? So if we go down, we scroll down here, it will show you the money line for each book that is offering this right now. Now, there are some books on here that are not available, but my personal favorite book is Bookmaker. Bookmaker is really, to me, the most efficient, gives you the earliest lines with the highest limits, with the best rollover bonuses. So, other places will offer you 100% bonus, but it's like a 30 times rollover for like Bet Online and things like that. That's not something I really recommend, especially if you're not like a very avid gambler, especially if you're only doing football, because you might only, especially if you're someone, let's say you're someone who does only NFL and you only bet like 2 games a week, you're probably not going to hit that 30 rollover, at least not in one season. So Bookmaker, they do allow you to pick which bonus you want if you want one. And a lot of the bonuses are like 5 to 6 time rollovers, which is a lot more manageable. But this is what they offer as far as OddsJam is concerned. They will show you all the different lines that are out there. So they'll show you if there is any arbitrage that can be had. So if you are, or they will show you the best lines. So this minus 385 is the best money line available anywhere. So if you wanted to bet the money line, you would pick one of these 4 books that's offering the minus 385, and that's the one you would take. The plus 345. Surprise, surprise, like I said, Bookmaker being the best, is offered at Bookmaker, and that's it. They are the only book that is going to pay you plus 345 to bet the Cowboys. So if you wanted the Cowboys on the money line, that's where you would go. But as you can see here, they have everything. So if you want to bet like just the first quarter, if you want to bet props, whatever, you would come to oddsjam.com. You would click on whichever one you want. I'm going to click on first quarter spread. So click on that, come to the bottom, and then it shows you who has what. So Cowboys plus 2.5 for the first quarter. Seems like this is one of the bigger lines here, the best lines. But if you want to get the plus 3.5 for the first quarter, these are your 2 spots here. And, very easy to use, guys. You know how to read a chart. I'm explaining for you. But this is the best way to ensure that you're getting the best line, that you are only depositing at the books that consistently give you the best lines, and you're not having to pay fees for all these other books that you're not going to really use very frequently. And then, most importantly, it's the best way to find arbitrage. So there's a lot of times throughout the year that you'll see an arbitrage pop up. And so one of those is like the Seahawks, right? Now, this one was one that took place earlier in the year, but what is arbitrage? Well, it's basically when you can get one thing on one side. So in this case, it was Seahawks plus 2.5 earlier, or plus 3 earlier in the season, or earlier in the off season. And now we're able to take the other side. Now we're able to take the Colts plus 3. So in that particular scenario, you would bet both sides, and you're going to win either way. Now, with the lines and with the spreads, you really want to make sure that you're taking like plus money or minus money. So let's say that you're taking money lines and you're taking somebody at minus 110, and another book is offering the other side of that, whatever the other team is, at plus 150, right? Well, if that's the case, then either way you would win money, because if the favorite wins and you win $100 for laying 110, then great. You didn't have to put that much on the other side to win $100 because it was at a plus 150. You had to put in, I don't know, let's say like $70 or whatever the case that works out to. Actually comes out to about $67. So in that particular scenario, you would still come out ahead about $33. So that's arbitrage. When you can make those numbers work, you can take both sides of something and still win money at the end of the day, regardless of who wins. And once you can find that arbitrage, I said this before, you're no longer betting. You're just printing money and you're waiting for the game to happen. So OddsJam will show you those arbitrage availabilities and options as soon as they come up, because they don't last very long. Usually it's something like an injury. So usually you'll get like plus 110. The other team will have some injury. They'll change the odds, and then that team will be plus like 130 or something. And now you can take both sides at plus money, and you're not going to lose money either way. So keep an eye on OddsJam, guys. If you don't have a subscription to this, I'll put the link in below. It is a subscription service, so you do need to do that. I'll also put in the link for Bookmaker. So if you haven't already looked at Bookmaker, I would definitely look at them, because they are, I can almost guarantee you, they are going to put the lines out the earliest for week 2. And as we discussed last time, you want to get those lines as early as possible to get the best line possible. So those are the 2 things I would tell you to check out, guys. Thank you again. Sorry for the long video. Good luck. Let's get started. It's week 1. Let's see what happens. You can make that money.